Just when we thought the stakes of this current story arc could not get any higher, we cut back to the high school with the main protagonist, who, by the way, still have yet to finish one day of school yet, which I would just love to point out. The amount of chapters that we've already passed on just one whole afternoon has to be some Dragon Ball Z timing if I've ever seen it before. But getting back into focus, now with Koki Yukishiro and Nurse Queen on their side, along with Kintaka's nanomachines giving them a full recording of Koki's perspective, they should be able to find the culprit responsible for blackmailing her, as the students prepare to take their next step on the hunt. Although, based on the extreme difficulty Grandma Seiko and her adult allies had against the Iron Bull and Jiang Shi enemies, I think it's pretty possible the protagonist team, despite feeling like they might have a handle on things, are about to have a huge rug pulled out from underneath them. Why do I believe that? Well, just from this chapter alone, it's clear that my previous prediction that there are enemies just literally everywhere all around us and no one can be trusted was pretty true, as even ordinary innocents that one would never expect are revealed to be enemies in this chapter. Even ordinary innocents that one would never expect have become enemies. And while Mr. Sanjome, or Count Saint Germain as we know him, is definitely weird and sticks out like a sore thumb, what is gonna be the most dangerous, in my opinion, are the threats that are gonna sneak up on us when we least expect it. I mean, Seiko and her allies were literally just having a nice relaxing brunch when they were sneak attacked by the two blackmailed yokai users. And sure, Koki Yukishiro's method was a bit rushed of trying to steal Momo's powers, but as we've seen when Count Saint Germain confronted Okarun, his strategy of making the target yield is almost flawless, which in my opinion just shows that the level of problem each new yokai user is capable of bringing completely just depends on that particular person and their skill sets. If they're great with emotional manipulation, whereas people like the Iron Bull, who was a very awkward, quiet person from the very beginning, probably wouldn't be that cunning and evil and mastermindy, if you get what I'm saying. The protagonist crew does have a couple suspects just based off of the teachers that Koki interacts with. Unfortunately, all of them are pretty ordinary, and despite beginning to suspect Saint Germain, as they probably should, because of his overall weirdness, Kintaka just shuts it down and just says that Mr. Sanjome is just off-putting and quirky, and that's actually normal for him. Sure, Mr. Sanjome had that very weird and definitely interesting encounter with Okarun, where he tried to debate him in the intellectual marketplace of ideas, and after beating him, tried to tell him that, you know what, now you have to admit that you lost this intellectual debate, right? Sure, that would immediately tip me off, but if you've got someone like Kintaka being like, dude, he's just weird, don't even think about it, obviously they're just gonna brush it off. Which, this could be foreshadowing as to how they actually discover Saint Germain's true identity, by like him actually for once acting in a very normal way, and it tips them off that something is weird. But on top of that, this also could be referencing the state that the DanDaDan audience is in right now, because if you've been paying attention to the community, there has been a lot of back and forth in regards to if Count Saint Germain truly is the main villain, or if he's just some kind of red herring that Tatsu is really just trying to make us think is the bad guy. But I truly don't know if I buy that. The segue of the Danmanra arc to our current arc was split with the scene of Saint Germain cornering the fairy tale card and stealing his powers, after having tricked and played the fairy tale card like a fool. But I don't know if I buy all of that, because the entire segue of the Danmanra arc to the current story arc that we're in was split by the scene of Count Saint Germain cornering the fairy tale card and stealing his powers. Saint Germain spent all of this time tricking and manipulating the fairy tale card like a fool, and also playing people like Unji Zuma and the protagonist to do his dirty work for him. Mr. Sanjome also appears out of what are known as the Gates of Hell, and seems to have the power to affect people's memories to such a degree he can almost appear and disappear from locations at random, something that Kintaka even mentions. And if he can just fill people's heads with memories by just saying that, oh yeah, I've actually been a tenured teacher at this high school for years and I run the occult club, you don't remember me? And everyone's like, oh yeah, that's right, Mr. Sanjome, I've known you for whole years. It's like some Tsukishima stuff. Or, just based off of the words of the Iron Bull blackmailed user, Mr. Sanjome is also infiltrating plenty of other locations and even work positions just to spread his influence out and reach as many vulnerable people as he can. Count Saint Germain has a type of victim he's looking for. The salaryman of the Iron Bull was some awkward guy, as I mentioned before, who met the love of his life that was the only girl that was willing to give him the time of day, and she's now dying from disease. so he's desperate to save her. Koki Yukishiro was an outcast from family and friends and thought she lost everything that made her who she was, resorting to her falling prey to, the social media and, sending out bad pictures and setting herself up for blackmail. We've got Unjizuma, who was a delinquent teen with one of the worst youth and backstories I've ever possibly seen in anime manga history. And that turned into a spiraled, twisted sense of justice that allowed Germain to manipulate that and give him a goal in mind that seemed good, but actually ended up being evil. The one thing that all of these people have in common is that they are all down on their luck and are in some of the lowest moments of their lives when Count Saint Germain decides to show up. And by giving them a way out of this dark abyss, he's almost like a cult, right, in real life, using the weakness and insecurities of their victims to prey on them, gather more members, and instill more and more loyalty by cutting off every single path out that they have besides the path they have to follow, which is the path that you want them to take. And this just becomes even more clear when we get the reveal that Miss Adachi, Koki Yukishiro's homeroom teacher, and normally from what Kintaka tells us, a nice and polite, average teacher, is actually revealed to be the source of the Jiangshi vampires that attacked Psycho at the cafe. And while this could just be, a lie that she says to excuse why she was gone, I think it's pretty truthful and probably makes sense as to why she was targeted by Germain. Miss Adachi claims her mother isn't feeling well, probably in the hospital. Simply, I believe it simply because it gives Saint Germain a weakness to prey on and makes sense why a normal, good person would fall into such evil deeds like anonymous hit jobs or yokai hunts. This small scene with Adachi talking with Koki could also potentially mean that Count Saint Germain has Adachi blackmailing Koki Yukishiro. Now, again, Miss Adachi could have her memories changed and moved so she doesn't remember being the one to blackmail, or vice versa. Count Saint Germain's abilities are so omnipresent, I don't think we can discount him as any kind of threat at all. I think it's pretty clear as day that he's the villain, and we're getting ourselves into scenarios where it's so obvious that he's the villain, we're like, no way, can't be, no way. But even though I could be wrong and there could be some big bad whose name is DanDaDan or whatever, and Count Saint Germain is actually trying to stop him, until right now, based off the information, I've got all my sights set on Germain. And the short scene with Miss Adachi that we do get also makes another hint at something that we also got last chapter with Saint Germain, which is the singles mixer that's being planned by the teachers at the school for basketball. Now, again, mentioning this event from last chapter and the same coach inviting Mr. Sanjome hints at its importance as either some big thing where a battle is going to happen, or Germain's going to gain access to a whole litany of teachers that may be vulnerable that he can turn into allies. And speaking of new lackeys for Count Saint Germain, we cut back to Heisei for a minute. And if you don't know who Heisei is, I think this might be the first time we got a name drop for him, but this is Okarune's bully that appeared early on in the series and was brought back a couple chapters ago just so Okarune could dust his ass in a foot race. Now, I said it before in that review and I'll say it again, having this random dude show up again after 100 chapters just to show how far Okarune has come with just his resolve, his physical stature, but his confidence as a whole. Seeing Okarune smoke Heisei was satisfying. Not just because it's fun to watch bullies get embarrassed, because again, it's a great showing of Okarune's character development and how far he's come since the beginning of this story. And if that's all he came back for, I would have been fine with that. But it does seem that Heisei was brought back into the picture to fill an even more important role, which again, just shows how big and layered this arc really is. Rather than just being a symbol for Okarune's character development, Heisei's status, it turns out, as a popular kid in school is slowly declining. Now, this could just be due to his awful personality, being an asshole and a bully, and sure, he's a creepiness to women, so that doesn't help. This kind of attitude is only gonna get you so far in life, and high school is almost always where this type of dude peaks, simply because once you get past high school and at a certain age, maturity is what's deemed as attractive and desirable in social situations. So just being immature only gets you so far until everyone around you grows up and you're the only one that hasn't. But on top of that and my own personal ideas of how people are, it seems Okarune is slowly gaining more popularity in school as well, which makes sense if you think about it. I mean, I saw a post the other day that was saying that Okarun's pretty much hanging out with most of the popular people in his school at this point, or if they're not popular, they're just eye candy. You know, Gigi's the handsome dude, Aira's the cute girl. So after Okarun beats Heisei in a sprint, it's clear that Okarun is surpassing Heisei, not just in physical skills, but in social standing. And when Heisei sees that the two girls he's harassing are whispering about how they find Okarun attractive now, this is the final straw for Heisei, who, frankly, just does a major self-report that he reveals that he is definitely one of those bullies that just feels bad about themselves and needs to put others down to feel better. Okarun's success is grinding at Heisei, making him feel inadequate. And just another quick opinion, if other people's successes are becoming your failures, and vice versa, if your successes are what you deem as other people's failures, you might have lost the plot and you might need to regain some self-awareness. So it shows the disconnect of Heisei and why he would turn evil. All of these characters have such human reactions to this information, especially at the age that they're at, right? Koki falling prey to her parents' terrible parenting skills, terrible self-accountability, and just wanting to find attention anywhere she can get it, so she posts a lewd photo, to now we've got the high school bully realizing that people don't actually like him for him and just like him because they don't want him to bully them, and is now realizing that people are now enjoying other people that are genuinely good people. He is now at a crossroads where, oh shit, do I suck? And of course, as an angsty teenager, a bully, it's so much easier to then put that blame on others and say, it's this guy's fault for turning people against me, rather than looking within and going, you know what, maybe I'm a dickhead. Heisei shows us that he was gifted one of the Ocera Blade's daggers, as after the main villain, Count Saint Germain in my eyes, picked up on his feelings of self-loathing and jealousy, whoever this villain may be, they telepathically connect with Heisei and talk to him through his mind without ever revealing themselves, which has us learn two things in this scene, and it's why it's so important. One, Count Saint Germain does not need to introduce himself or even reveal who he is to the victims he bestows with Ocera Blade daggers. He can just have them appear out in front of them and just talk to them telepathically, invading their minds and recruiting them that way. Two, it shows us that there are two different types of daggers. The white dagger gives someone powers of a specific yokai, while the black blade is used to steal powers after the opponent admits defeat. By harping on Heisei's innate desire to be better than Okarun, Germain convinces Heisei to resort to these evil methods and stand up to protect his popularity. Which, while revealing how the Ocera Blade works in more detail, it also shows that not everyone might get the two daggers. Koki may have only been given the black dagger and then given power with the white dagger, whereas Heisei was given both to basically give himself powers whenever he felt necessary, showing that Germain may be able to use his manipulation at different levels depending on who needs what. Heisei wasn't able to be convinced right away. He needed to be reminded of his inadequacy before resorting to his last method. Whereas Koki was so down on her luck, she could easily just be given a power and sent on her way. And it makes sense because at first, Heisei thinks this is a whole bunch of baloney. Germain tells Heisei that Okarun is cheating and getting better than him because he has special powers. So it's only fair that Heisei has powers of his own to compete. And in this moment of weakness, after those girls insults him, he pricks himself with that dagger to see if he can gain strength and if it was all a bunch of hoopla, which summons forth an evil deity that appears right behind Heisei. And I'll be honest, after seeing this page, I scoured the internet for the DanDaDan community, looked into all these different things, and while I may have missed something, I couldn't find anything that either confirmed or denied these allegations. Based off of my first impressions, it seems like this might be some kind of variant of Turbo Granny, or honestly, a concept that hasn't been visited yet in DanDaDan, the idea that multiple versions of the same yokai can exist. I mean, in this arc alone, we've seen multiple pygmies, multiple Jiangshi, and to be fair, throughout the series, while it's always been kind of assumed that every yokai is one of one, the way that Turbo Granny and other occultists feed us information about yokai and deities makes it very clear that they aren't one of a kind. And to give you an example, Reiko Kashima specifically, while very unique, has her own name and has her own legends, is at the end of the day a split-mouthed woman, which is a very common and popular yokai in Japan. It wouldn't be impossible for other split-mouthed women to exist. Frankly, it's almost probably guaranteed because legends of certain yokai come from multiple different countries and wouldn't travel as far as they did if they were just one-off local legends. But without jumping the gun and immediately saying that Heisei now has his own Turbo Granny, I also want to bring up the possibility that there are also variants of yokai that are just a little bit different, such as the Hopping Granny or Jumping Baba, that do go hand in hand with Turbo Granny, but just are a little bit different, probably just based off of a different culture's dialect and a different understanding of the same legend. But without spending too much time dwelling on that, I think what's more important to bring up is how much it sets the perfect rivalry between Heisei and Okarun. And I love it because I really never thought DanDaDan would enter the shonen route of creating a rival for Okarun that has the exact same powers and strength as he does, especially the story ramifications that could go on right now, considering Okarun doesn't have access to Turbo Granny, meaning that this might create a scenario where Okarun literally has to overcome and defeat everything that he once was. And I think this also raises more questions as well. If Count Saint Germain already failed to steal Okarun's power, why would he send Heisei after Okarun a second time? Adding fuel to the fire of people wondering if Count Saint Germain is really the villain and there's someone else pulling the strings. And also adding weight to Kintaka's words from the beginning of the chapter, which almost seem to be speaking directly to us, saying that if we're so quick to suspect him, we're probably wrong. But also, this could mean other things, such as Okarun having powers he's not yet privy to. And this has also been hinted at, considering he still has the ability to inhabit empty space. Or, even worse, this is our Turbo Granny that Germain already captured after noticing Okarun wasn't connected to her anymore, and she's just taken on a different, more evil appearance to fit her new host. Which, I doubt that. I would hate to see that, and I don't think that is the case, but I do just want to put all of these thoughts out into the ether, just to see what you guys have to say. Don't be afraid to comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Because at the end of the day, it could just be as simple as Germain wants to eliminate people he views as threats. Because not for nothing, Psycho doesn't, as far as we know, have any kind of crazy yokai power, but she was still a target for power stealing. And she's just a regular spirit medium. Could this have something to do with the fact that Okarun was hinted at being training? Could this have anything to do with the fact that Momo hinted at Okarun needing to be trained by Psycho? And when we eventually do get to that point, Psycho could reveal that there's more to her spirit powers than meets the eye, and she's going to teach Okarun that very same power? Honestly, until the next couple of chapters, we just don't know. The story has been moving somewhat slowly paced, but the amount of events are really kicking off, and it's going to be one of the most satisfying slow burns ever. Every new chapter, we end up with new questions rather than answers. But it just tells me that Yukinobu Tatsu is crafting this new story arc with the finest tone of care, and I'm all for it. I don't know what to even expect next. I feel like I say that after every chapter, but I do know for sure I'll be here making a video to cover it every week. So subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Like the video if you enjoyed, and I sincerely appreciate you making it all the way to the end. Check out the main channel if you want some more content. DanDaDan stuff is on there as well, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.